Hollyhocks are a cottage garden favorite that are beginning to be popular again. I first saw hollyhocks in my husband's grandma's garden, and I actually saved some seeds that may be growing now in my own garden. In today's video, I'm going to share my best tips for how to grow hollyhocks so you can add this beautiful flower to your garden. Stay tuned till the end, and I'll share some bonus tips for growing hollyhocks if you live here in the low desert of Arizona. Hollyhocks flowers begin blooming at the bottom of the plant, and the blooms spread up the tall stalks, producing a long display of color and almost endless supply of blossoms. Hollyhock flowers can be single or double and come in colors ranging from pink and white to yellow, red, and even nearly black. Some types of hollyhocks can grow up to 12 feet tall. So my first tip for growing hollyhocks is to understand how hollyhocks grow. If you plant hollyhocks and they don't bloom the first season, don't despair. That's actually normal. Hollyhocks are biennial. What is a biennial? Biennials live for only 2 years. Normally, biennials germinate from seed and grow strong root systems and foliage the first year. The following season, they send up flowering shoots that produce seed and then die. So at the end of that first season, all you may have is a bunch of leaves, but some nice deep roots underground. Don't worry, the following season, that stalk will grow up and you will get the blooms. Some seasons, those two things can happen all in one season. If you have an extra long growing season, that plant will grow and develop and send up a flowering stalk. Although hollyhocks are a biennial, it often seems like they're a perennial, or a plant that lives for several years, because hollyhocks so readily drop their seeds and reseed in the same area from which they're grown. Those same plants seem to come back year after year. Where is the best place to plant hollyhocks? Choose a location for growing hollyhocks that gets plenty of sunlight and that has good, well-draining soil. Just about like every plant, right? Hollyhocks are no different. They grow best in sunny areas with good soil. Plant your seeds about 1/4 of an inch deep. Those seeds aren't very big, so they don't need to be very deep. Allow about 2 feet between your hollyhock plants when you're planting. Those plants tend to grow large. Because hollyhock plants grow so tall, an excellent place for them to grow is at the back of the border or along a fence line. Hollyhock blooms attract wildlife, hummingbirds, butterflies. The next tip is to plant hollyhocks at the right time. If you're going to start from seed, know that hollyhocks have a large taproot, and so you're going to need to start them in a larger pot. Start those seeds indoors about 9 weeks before your last average frost date. Plant those seedlings outside 2 or 3 weeks after your last frost. Here are some tips for growing healthy hollyhocks with lots of blooms. The first tip is to amend the planting area with plenty of compost each spring. Water hollyhocks deeply each time you water. If you want to encourage more blooms and fewer seeds, pinch off the faded blooms before seeds form. A lot of effort goes into forming those seeds. Regular deadheading will encourage more flowers and encourages the plant's energy to go into producing more flowers and not producing seeds. Leave the blooms on the plant at the end of the season to save the seeds, or let them fall to reseed for next year. Keep your hollyhock trimmed up and tidy. Often hollyhock leaves become damaged or turn yellow. Keep those damaged leaves picked off the plant for a healthy plant. Hollyhock plants often get rust on them. So my next tip is all about how to prevent and treat rust on hollyhocks. The way you water hollyhocks can affect whether or not your plant is affected by rust. Overhead water and water that gets on leaves often causes problems with rust on hollyhocks. So it's important to water at ground level with some kind of drip irrigation or a hose that is watering the ground directly, so that water can seep into the ground and go directly to the roots where it's needed. Allowing about 2 feet between plants gives the plants plenty of air circulation, and a lack of air circulation is one of the problems that can lead to rust in hollyhocks. If you notice rust on your hollyhock, remove the affected leaves and discard of them. Don't put them in your compost. There are organic options that you can use. If a plant is heavily infested, consider removing that entire plant and planting in a new area the following season. So my next tip is all about encouraging those hollyhocks to come back the following year. So what do you do at the end of the season as the blooms fade and seed pods begin to form? If you want seeds in place for next spring, simply let those seed pods develop and fall off the plant. If you want to save seeds to plant in other areas, harvest those seed pods when they're completely dry and the seeds inside are nice and dark. You might see several plants growing up around your hollyhock. It's perfectly fine to divide those plants and add them in other areas or give them more room between plants. Here are some tips for growing hollyhocks in the low desert of Arizona and other hot climates. At the end of the season, prune those spent hollyhock stalks down to about 6 inches. Remove all the spent plant material from around the plants. The best time to plant hollyhock seeds here in the low desert is October and November. There's no need to start seeds indoors. Seeds do really well when planted directly in the garden. You can also plant hollyhock seeds again in February and March. Here in the low desert, hollyhocks do best with morning sun and filtered afternoon sun. They like a little bit of afternoon shade, and those blooms will last longer if they have some afternoon shade. Here in the low desert, hollyhocks bloom from April through about June or July, depending on where they're located in your yard. In the fall, once temperatures cool off, divide and replant hollyhocks around your yard. Hollyhocks are one of my favorite flowers that come back year after year. Thank you so much for watching.